All right. So it looks like it's, I always have to verify to make sure it's live. Great. Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So this show, this particular episode, I've been dying to have this conversation with this man because those that know me is kind of like you have the sci-fi world and then you have the real world and understanding medicine and what it can and can't do. And if you're familiar with the movie Limitless, and I think the name of that particular pill in Limitless was the NZT48 pill, right? So those that know what that pill is, we're going to kind of dive into that space and we're going to really deep dive into some questions and get you some answers to kind of really help you. But I like to give whoever I'm talking to a particular nickname. So obviously his name is Dr. Mike, but for this show, we're going to call him the Biohacking Boss.
Yes, BB, man.
So the floor is yours, man. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about you and what we're going to be diving into today?
Well, I have an accent. I'm originally from Belgium. Most people don't know where Belgium is. It's in the heart of Europe, very small country. I always say it's the size of the Everglades in Florida, a lot less alligators, but a lot more good beer and good chocolate. I came here in 1997. I've been here half my life now. Basically saved $400, packed my backpack, and I came to live the American dream. So needless to say, without mentors and without guidance, I got knocked down many times, but my motto quickly became, I never lose, I win or I learn. And so, I made it this far, doing very good, always been involved in health, especially sports performance initially, because I traveled with the Belgian Olympic swim team in preparation for the Olympic Games in Atlanta. That's when I got exposed to supplementation mostly. And came here as a physical therapist, but quickly saw that what they call alternative medicine, which is a wrong labeling, such as acupuncture, oriental medicine, Chinese herbal medicine, homeopathy, food therapy, all that kind of stuff, worked very well. So basically went back to school and got all those licenses. But after another 1,000 patients, I really realized, even though these therapies are less invasive and less harmful than conventional medicine, meaning drugs and surgeries, I really didn't get the long-lasting results I was hoping for either. So I decided to get my PhD in holistic nutrition, and I started to look at Mother Nature and the animals in the wild and see what they were doing. And by combining those two, I really found the truths about health, and I'm very confident I can help anybody regain control of their health. So fast forward today, I feel I'm in a position I can be a mentor to people that I didn't have, avoid pitfalls and show them how to regain control of their health. So I do a lot of mentorship programs and help people doing that. There's usually 3 phases. Most people fall in phase number 1 because most people are in ill health. They either have pain, they're diagnosed with a medical condition, they're not in shape. So we need to first regain control of their health and get back to quote unquote normal. What that means is, eradicate any pain or any medical condition and balance their body. Step number 2 is when you're normal, we want to be optimal. So that's where we want to get strong and fit and vital and not feel fatigued after work and be in control of our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And only when in optimal health we actually could set a stage, or we would have a great foundation to maximize the benefits of biohacking. And biohacking really is a broad and amorphous term that covers a wide variety of activities that can objectively reverse your biological age. And today that science fiction has become science fact. And so that's something that's available to you and me and everybody listening. And so I feel very confident in being a guide for people to navigate through those 3 stages and be effective. At the same time, I do mentoring on business too, making sure people know their purpose in life, have their business, have a plan, have a strategy, fire the people that need to be fired, don't take on projects they don't need to take on because it doesn't fit their goals and their dreams, and keep them accountable and make sure they reach their goals. So that's what I'm doing today.
Nice, very nice. So I want to unpack some of that, and also I think like you gave yourself some credit, but I think you missed out on some other opportunities. Like we're talking to a world record holder in swimming as well. So I want you to kind of like I want you to time travel back, and I want you to talk about that. Like, were you into biohacking back then, and that's what kind of got you to where you are right now, or is this kind of like being in that level of swimming kind of put you forward to where you are?
Excellent question. So when I was in school is different in Europe, but I was like, 8 years old, elementary school over there. We did obviously all kinds of sports just like you do here. So I was on a soccer team, basketball team. I was the fastest runner. The only thing I got beaten was swimming because one of my friends was, in the local swim team and I wasn't. So I was a sore loser, I guess. That motivated me to, join the local swim team. And that's where I found my passion for swimming. So I still tell people it's really my worst sport. But anyways, I swam from I was 8 till I was 24 years old and had some Belgian titles and records, etc. But then I took a 22-year break while I was here. I really didn't swim competitively, didn't work out. And then I decided to do master swimming again. So, but now I'm 46. And so I really figured, well, I don't have the endurance, I don't have the VO2 max. So how am I going to compensate, for not being in my 20s? And so that's when I started looking, okay, I'm stronger at 48 than when I was 22, but I don't have the endurance, right? So how do I compensate? Diet, supplementation, mindset, all those types of things. And so that's when I really got into biohacking, because even people my age, I'm 51 now, I'm preparing for the World Championships in Japan in August 2023. But my competition, they swim at least 2 hours a day. I don't have time to do that. And I really don't have the desire either. So while they're training harder, I'm trying to train smarter and I'm competing in the 50 plus. But what I'm trying to do is get my body in a 40-year-old biological age. So I will be chronologically 51, but hopefully my body's only 40, and that will, be my secret weapon, is the biohacking. I was successful in 2019, swimming a world record in 2019 doing that.
So, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? I mean, obviously, we're talking about swimming, you're talking about sports, but then you found another sub niche in the sports spectrum with a passion for like boxing. I mean, I've seen pictures on your Instagram page of you with Holyfield and Rick Bowe and all these other boxers. So, how did you go from like being highly competitive in sports, finding that swimming was your weak spot, then you dove head on into it? How the hell did you end up in boxing? Like, how did that come into play?
Well, I'm not a boxer, but being the world record holder, I became a member of the World Sports Alumni, WSA, and that's basically an organization where a lot of alumni and also active sports people get together just to network, but also, for example, especially before COVID, we went to many charities and events where the charities could announce that we would be there. We would sign books and baseballs and footballs, and we had a good time. So that's how I met a lot of NFL players, heavyweight champion boxers, like you said, really Big Daddy Bowe, Holyfield, Thomas Pinklon, and those kind of guys. So I became close to all those people. And what I did for them at that time, I was the CEO of a stem cell company from 2015 till COVID hit. So stem cells, again, is one of those biohacking strategies, right? Because it brings us beyond our genetic programming. And so we did stem cells on Riddick Bowe. His shoulders and knees were shut. And after that, we did one stem cell injection into the joints, and then we did 3 shockwave treatments. And, Riddick Bowe still today, and this has been a few years, says that he's never felt so good. Same for Pinkless Thomas for his low back. NFL players, Ron Dixon, who still has a record in the NFL. He played for the New York Giants, so his knees were shot. He had to retire early, tried everything on the planet. And when we did his knees, now he's, playing with his kid and be able to run and to walk without pain. So, that's how I got in contact with them. That's how I got their trust, because we treated many top athletes with these regenerative medicine therapies, and we did that very successfully.
Very cool, very cool. So I mean, I'm painting this picture. I mean, obviously, like you were big into sports, you were very successful in sports, and then you took what you learned there and you moved it into other areas of expertise. You got your doctorate and you became a doctor. So I want to talk about like the elephant in the room, like the limitless pill, or in today's world, Adderall. Like,
Yeah.
where does your pill fall into that scope? Are you more so the limitless pill? Are you more so on the Adderall? And what are the causes and effects, and how does it actually affect the brain?
Yeah. So I came across it like a good year ago because I'm always looking at things, right? Obviously, I'm not a fan of any, pharmaceutical drugs. That's a no to me. So I'm always looking for, the natural ones that have similar effects. So we all know Adderall works. I've never taken it, but I hear it all the time. It does the job. But obviously, you have the adverse reactions, high blood pressure, which increases your risk for a heart attack, heart disease, long-term use, personality disorders, and the list goes on. You can read the insert. So it's not something that I can really recommend from my position. So, then we look at what they call, instead of smart drugs, we look at nootropics, which are natural smart drugs, basically, without any side effects. And there's plenty on the market. But when I came across this one, I really felt this was something for me and something that I could recommend to my clients. And so there was a cancer doctor called Dr. Emandi, who works at Boston Neuro and Psych. And he stumbled upon this patent pending active ingredient called biocitroid. Biocitroid is a terpene that comes basically, or is extracted from, a specific type of blood orange citrus fruit in the, not the Amazon, but in the rainforest in Southeast Asia. And biocitroid at 30 milligrams is able to cross the blood-brain barrier, which means it has a fast effect. Once you take it 30 minutes later, you're in the zone, and we'll talk about how that works. But it only takes 30 minutes. While most supplements or nootropics takes weeks and weeks to build up in the system before you may feel a difference, right? So that's a big advantage. What the company did, ClariGenZ, is they added 3 other neuro agents to the biocitroid. Number 1, they added L-tyrosine, which is an amino acid, which is known for memory, focus, and function, cognitive function. Then they added phenylalanine, which is another neuro agent which helps with photographic memory, focus, and creativity. And then the third one is an important one to me because it's called phosphatidylate, which is a healthy fat found in our body, but also in our brain, because phosphatidylate promotes NGF, which is nerve growth factor. So it actually stimulates, an increase in the network and in the neural connections in our brain and the neurotransmitters, because as you know, we only use a very small percentage of our brain. So this is like a brain enhancer because you get the neural connections. For those who watched Avatar, I can't wait till Avatar 2 comes out. When we think about that 3 and the connections, that's what nerve growth factor do. And so this formula enhances that aspect too. So those 4 ingredients are all natural. There's no side effects. They're safe. There's no jittering effects, nothing like that. But what do? They balance the 5 intelligence hormones, which are dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and acetylcholine, right? And so when they are balanced, when they're optimized, we actually get into the zone. I always think about Michael Jordan. He always was into the zone, right? And most of us today actually have a problem with focusing, paying attention, getting the job done, being productive, because we have what I call a dopamine overload. For example, we're reaching for sugary fruits and drinks and energy drinks and coffee, which gives a squirt of dopamine. Dopamine is our reward hormone. And if we feel good, we're going to go for more and more and more. But social media really is the thing that put us in the dopamine overload stage. Not just youngsters, but ourselves at our age. We catch ourselves being too long on that social media, because every time somebody likes your post or give a positive comment or heart your Instagram, it's a little squirt of dopamine and we like it. And that's why we want to be longer on it and find more of those dopamine squirts. But having said all that, it puts us in a dopamine overload, which puts those 5 intelligent hormones out of balance. And dopamine overload causes a brain fog, causes fatigue, lethargy, can't focus, can't get the job done, can't finish your homework on time, can't start a project, procrastination, fidgeting, all that kind of stuff. And it's a vicious cycle that we can't get out. So besides this nootropic called Focus Plus basically in 30 minutes modulates, optimizes, and balances those hormones so we can get in the zone just in 30 minutes. And it lasts for about, I would say, 6 hours, right? Now, I'm not the guy that would tell you like it's a silver bullet, all a fix all. It does work, but in my upcoming book, The Key to Your Success, I talk about optimizing productivity and focus, freeing up valuable time and living stress-free. Hopefully it's published by the end of this year, January the 1st, we'll see where it gets. But besides the nootropic or the quick fix, it is very important that we realize we have a dopamine overload and that we stay away from coffee and energy drinks and sugar, and that we start to manage our social media so we don't get into that overload and we can back to focusing. So the book said lots of tips and strategies to do that. And so, you know, we can use this Focus Plus certainly to get into the zone, whether it's, you know, to make a killer presentation or to compete or to train for competition, or, you know, whether you want to finish your homework, it certainly is a helpful tool.
So I want to kind of skin back the onion a little bit on what you said. I mean, obviously you brought up something, and I think it was an article on your website about like the importance of having protein, right, for the brain, and the building blocks of protein is amino acids, which is one of the ingredients that you were talking about. So I want you to kind of talk about this in the sense of, okay, like what you're describing, somebody that is into keto or in ketosis, they may say that they may get what you're describing. So what's the differences between, like, obviously caffeine gets you the dopamines, right? Ketosis, I'm not sure what that does, but I know that it helps you to focus. And then what you're talking about. So what's the differences between the three, and what's the cause and effects and the benefits?
Well, you know, again, the bad diets, the bad drinks, the sugar, the energy drinks, the coffee, you know, many times we call energy drinks and coffee stimulants, and that's a total misnomer because they're depressants, right? When we take something like that, initially we get an energy jolt, but where does the energy come from? We're borrowing it from our body, right? So we need to pay for that later, and that's when we can get into these depressive states, right? Depressive state, and the only solution we have is drink more energy drinks or drink more coffee. Otherwise, we get a withdrawal headache and all that kind of stuff. So we got to really look at those things like we're borrowing from the body, and in the long term, they're all depressants. They're certainly not stimulants. They're quite the opposite. Okay, so obviously, if we can get away from, you know, the empty calorie foods and drinks and caffeine and energy drinks and sugar in our diet, and we balance our diet, then obviously we have a very smart solution to all those effects, because, you know, it's not just the depression, but it's also if the body doesn't get what it needs, you can't perform, right? You can't focus. And so when you say if we can get into a good balanced diet, or even when we're in keto and we're burning those fats versus those sugars, and rely more on lean proteins, yes, it's going to help us getting more into, you know, the zone or better focus, just because we upgraded our diet, right? And so anytime we can upgrade our diet or our nutrition, it's going to affect every single cell in the body, right? So that's it. Now, if we want to get dopamine, right? Let's say you're not on social media and you don't do those drinks, but you want to get into the zone, because dopamine is important to get into the zone. There's obviously, we need to upgrade that diet. But at the same time, there's certain supplements or certain nutrients, I would say, that would help get you there, right? Iron is important, niacin is important, folate is important, vitamin B6 is important. So we got to make sure we have ample of those, because they are basically precursors to dopamine. Certain supplements or nutrients that help us with dopamine production would be magnesium, curcumin, what else? Oregano extract, green tea extract, and vitamin D. So those are the top of my head, some very essential nutrients for dopamine. But I'm cautious here, because most of us are in the dopamine overload. So we need to first manage the overload, right? So yes, I mean, again, the supplement will balance that and modulate those 5 hormones. But in the long term, we want to make sure we upgrade our diet. We got to make sure we have the essential nutrients in our body. And then we still could obviously take the supplement to really get into the zone. I mean, all of athletes are on it now, not just athletes, CEOs, Silicon Valley CEOs, business people, people that need to, do a presentation in front of, 500 or 1,000 people. If they take it 30 minutes before, they're less distracted and they're more focused and they usually deliver much better. But in sports, it's, I had a talk with somebody a few days ago, and it was just about sports, and it's pretty amazing, because if we think about sports, many times, interviewers ask coaches, how much of the game is mental, and often the coach says, answers anywhere between 50 and 90%. Although reality is really 90 to 100%. Because if we look at top sports, right? All those top athletes, NFL, boxing, whatever you want to talk about, or the NBA, they all got amazing physical, capacities, and they got all skills, and they all have talent, or they wouldn't be there. So what makes the difference in winning? It's right up here, right? Again, I mentioned Michael Jordan. He was always in the zone. But what does that mean? Because most people have been in the zone before, but that was kind of by accident, and they don't know how to reproduce that. So people like me, or top people that know how to get in the zone, know exactly how to prepare themselves to be in that zone on demand and bring your A game each and every time, whether that's sports, whether that's a presentation, whether that's crushing your sales goals, or whatever it is that you do, right? And so in sports, it always makes the difference between winning and losing, because, I even was watching with my stepdad some football, and they're from Belgium, so I'm explaining some of the rules, of the game, because it's more interesting if you know what's happening, right? So anyways, they were saying, like, this one player had such a good game last game, which is 2 days ago, and today he can't do anything. What's the difference? Obviously, his physical capabilities are still the same. He's still in shape. His skills are the same. He's distracted, right? He's not in the zone. Something happened at home. Something happened with his wife, with his kids. Who knows what happened, but he's not there. So he's always just a fraction of a second late, misses the ball, things like that. So one day they have a good day, the next day they have a bad day. But the difference is here, and that's the difference between losing and winning. So if you're on the Focus Plus, you're in the zone. And so what are the benefits? Number one, you anticipate just a little bit faster than your competition, because you're not distracted by anything. If you miss the putt in golfing, usually that miss carries over a few more holes. If a wide receiver misses that ball or tumbles, it usually carries over a few plays. But when you're in the zone, it does not carry over to the next play, because you only have the end in mind. You only are about the win at the end. And so that's being in the zone, anticipating faster, focusing better, and winning, and not, kind of being upset about the little miss during one play, because it doesn't matter. It's just moving forward to that win. And it's the same in business, same in sports. So the mental aspect in performance becomes more and more important. And I think today, being in the zone is a skill or a strategy that we can have, and that we can, put on demand. We can actually get in the zone on demand and bring your A game when you want to.
Okay. So let's play devil's advocate right here. Let's say every morning I wake up, let's say 5 o'clock, and I go for a run, right? So again, you have the endorphins and you have adrenaline, and both the chemical formula of those two kind of give you the perception of what you're describing. So I want you to kind of talk about, like, what's the pros and cons to the benefits of that, right? Obviously, if I'm getting up and I'm running and I wake up and I'm ready for my day, like, that's going to last a period of time. It may fade out. How long is what you're talking about lasting versus me running for 30 minutes in the morning?
Yeah. And endorphins is there. For endorphins, you got to go for a long run, right?
Yeah.
So you go for a long run. No, and endorphins, I mean, and epinephrine is banned in sports because of its, amazing effect on focus and on performance, right? It's banned in sports and esports. So what this does, it balances and optimizes all 5 of them. So many nootropics, many smart drugs, many things that we do focuses on 1 or 2 of those intelligence hormones. And when we spike one, it has a certain effect, but it also takes the other ones out of balance. But when we talk about being in the zone, they all have to be in balance and optimal at their highest level. That's the difference.
Wow. Wow. So pretty much going back to what I said earlier when I first started the show about the limitless pill, essentially, if you ever seen that movie,
yeah,
what you're describing kind of falls into that spectrum. I mean, I'm not being facetious when I said it, but I'm saying you take this pill, let's say within 30 minutes, colors should be a little bit more vibrant. Your focus should be a little bit more detailed, and you should be able to execute it at a higher level. So,
yeah.
like, my next question is like, how long does this pill last? Is it like a 2-hour thing, a 6-hour thing? Like, how long?
6 hours, about 6 hours.
6 hours. Okay. And is
Yeah.
there any extended release version of it?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, 6
I had
hours.
to act. I mean, it's
Yeah, no.
like
Yeah.
why do 6 when I can do 12, right? So
Yeah, well, you take a second one if you really need 12. You don't want to take it before you go to sleep, of course, because sleep's important, and we need a deep rest in the delta stages to repair, replenish, and renew. But I mean, I know people that take 2 a day because they work 12 hours a day and want to stay focused to get a lot more things done.
So just to talk about, like, obviously we talked about Adderall, and Adderall is something that's essentially covered by insurance, so you can get Adderall pretty cheap, right? Like, what is this thing covered by insurance? Is it something that you got to pay out of pocket? Like, what kind of price?
Yeah, no, it's all natural. Insurance doesn't cover this. It's all natural, but the price point has been dropping because biocitroids, who extracted actually ounce per ounce costs more than gold ounce per ounce. But what the owner of the company did, he bought all the rights in America, so he's the only one who can import it into America. And so he bought it in bulk, and so the price has dropped significantly. But what I would tell people, is again, do you have to use it every day? I mean, it depends what you do or want to do. But in my book, there will be many tips and strategies that will help you. And then, so I usually suggest is once you really get control over your life and your agenda and the things that you are doing, and you realize the dopamine overload and the fact that you should spend less time on social media and upgrade your diet, then you may only decide to use this Focus Plus for a competition or for a very important presentation. But on a daily basis, your diet and those types of things, and knowing the strategies to not get distracted. I mean, just to give you a few examples, if you're going to have to work on a project for a few hours, you need to have a designated area in your house or at the office to do that. A lot of people today sit with the laptop in front of TV in the couch. It's not going to work that way, right? It's going to take 10 times longer to finish it, and it's not going to be a great result. You can tell people, if you have the designated area, not to disturb you. You can put your phone, or you should put your phone on airplane mode, because you're in control of your schedule. If you need to call, great, call, but don't have other people disturb you, because that's a disservice to you and you being productive. You can implement certain techniques that work for some people, not for others. One of them called is, just an example, the Pomodoro technique, which basically says, you're going to shut off all social media, put your phone in another room, and you're going to focus and work 20 minutes straight. After 20 minutes, the only thing you have in your room is a timer. You have 5-minute break. Now you can go walk out and do what you got to do. Come back in. Your phone stays out. All notifications on your laptop are off. 20 minutes, and you can repeat that cycle 4 or 5 times. And so for some people that works. So there's many tips and strategies that we can implement once we're aware of the fact that our attention span is low. We can't focus. We are always distracted. There's too many incoming messages. By the way, there's research showed there's 14,000 messages coming to each and every individual every single day. 14,000, right? So we're distracted all the time. So we can do something about it that doesn't cost anything. It's called getting organized and implement some tips and strategies. And then you don't have to use 2 pills per day and save yourself some money too. But no, it is affordable. And for your listeners, I would say, give it a try, because we could talk about research in general, but research today mostly is propaganda. So you got to be very careful, and you got to be very critical and exercise some critical thinking, even when you look at research. So if you have an opportunity to try it, then So you could actually try this for free if you go to trysmartpill.com, trysmartpill.com. You will get 2 pills. What I suggest, because people ask me, what do I do with them? Well, take the first one 30 minutes before you're going to start working, or start working on a project, or doing your work, or go work out in the gym, whatever it is. And if in 30 minutes you really don't feel anything, take that second pill right away. And then see what it does the next 6 hours. It will be subtle. It's, again, you won't have that jittery effect. It will be a different feeling that you have, which is hard to describe. But when you start doing work, you will feel that you are more in the zone and more focused and less distracted. And if it works for you, great. There you have a tool. If it doesn't work for you, don't buy it. It's that simple.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you're delivering hella value and you're breaking it down, because I mean, obviously scientifically and also metaphorically as well, right? So people can kind of understand and comprehend that. But I want to talk about you for a minute, right? I mean, obviously, I think that you're a highly competitive person, right? And you're also very animated. So if you could pick 3 more words to describe you, what would those 3 words be?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Persistent, charismatic, and caring. I love to help people. That's what I do all day long. I want to do all day long. Very rewarding.
So let's just go for that. I mean, obviously you want to help people, but in the medical space, there's always naysayers, or there's always some negativity. No matter how good you are and how long you've been that good for a period of time, something always may happen. Somebody has their opinion of that. So my next question is like, or give me an example of like the worst case analysis, or that's something that's happened to you from a particular patient that was negative, but you kind of overcame that hurdle and turned it into positive.
Well, no, I mean, I'm a keynote speaker too, so I know really well how to speak to people, or show them a different perspective. And if you listen to any of my speeches or look at my books, I really break it down to a very easy to understand level. But I also like to approach topics like health and disease from a totally different point of view and create those aha moments or paradigm shifts. Because we've been so ingrained by conventional medicine on how things are. We got disease. First thing we got to do is take drugs. If that doesn't work, let's try some injections. If that doesn't work, let's take the knife, right? And so we're also ingrained. And if the doctor says there's nothing we can do, then apparently there's nothing we can do. But they don't realize the doctor has a very, very small toolbox with 3 or 4 little things in it that they don't know much about. And it's all about disease. And then there's millions of things outside of that toolbox that he doesn't know about. But of course, the doctor will say there's nothing we can do, right? And so I always try to shift people's paradigm and look at things from a different perspective. So if somebody comes to me with something negative, I immediately will turn that into a positive. And again, you can't teach pigs to sing, they say too. So people that don't want help, I really can't help. I try, but if they don't want help, I can't help them, right? There's in order to create a habit or a new lifestyle, there's 3 components, right? There's knowledge, there's skill, and there's willingness. I can give them the knowledge, I can help them with the skills, but I can't make them want it, right? So, that's important. Once people are willing to make a change or be healthier or, fulfill their dreams or be successful in business or have a better personal life, when they're willing and they're seeking truly for help, I mean, there's no end to what we can do. We become limitless at that point. But if they're forced to come because their wife told them to, it's not going to work.
So I mean, I think it's definitely interesting. I mean, you're saying like you're your early 50s, and you're saying that you were a swimmer from 8. So I want to know kind of like how long did it take you to get to where you are? And then obviously you talked about like your swimming career, but obviously in that journey, there must have been a switch to where you wanted to come more on the medical side. So how long have you been in the medical space?
Well, I came from Belgium to the US as a licensed physical therapist. So after the 96 Olympic Games, they were short of physical therapists in the United States. So a recruiter called me and says, hey, do you want to come work over here? We're short of therapists. And I was only in my 20s. And of course, I want to. So he said, where do you want to work? I said, Fort Lauderdale. He said, why? I said, because I know all the bars, because that's where we went for training camps. The Swimming Hall of Fame is there, right? I'm in my 20s. So then 2 weeks later, they called back. I said, I can't find anything in Fort Lauderdale, but I have a position right now in Ormond Beach. So I go, excuse me? He says, Ormond Beach. I said, I don't know where that is, but the beach sounds fine, which is just north of Daytona. So that's where I ended up. So then I started working as a physical therapist, but I got exposed to acupuncture, oriental medicine, and I got very interested in it. So I went back to school to the Florida College of Integrative Medicine 3-year program. I got my license in acupuncture, board certified in Chinese herbs, homeopathy, etc. And that's when I really started to integrate both. And like I said earlier, even though they're less invasive, I really didn't see lasting results either. So then I decided to get my PhD in holistic nutrition. I really started looking at Mother Nature, because even today, if you don't know the answer, just look at animals in the wild and you know exactly what to do. And usually it's the opposite what the doctor tells you. And so then I got really confident in the fact that I can help anybody with their health. I'm very confident in that. And so finally, later in life, the last 5-10 years maybe, I really was able to surround myself with with people with the similar mindset, but also what I call mentors, people that were successful in the area before me, people that I take advice from. And so one of the things that I preach now really is like, we need those people in our lives to get to our highest potential. You can't do it by yourself, right? So this was just a few weeks ago. I had a podcast, and apparently there were 30 high school students live in the studio of the host. And so they wanted me to share one message with them. And the message was basically this: is because it's bigger than biohacking or being healthy. It's the purpose of your life. Because most people, not just high school kids, but even 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, we still didn't figure it out. And it's because we're really pushed in this one direction, right? We feel we have to go to school, and then we get pushed into college, and then we got to work till we're 65, and then supposedly the golden years come and we can buy an RV and travel around. But a stroke prevents that usually, right? So and our parents push us in certain directions. Dad's a lawyer, so we got to go to law school. Mom's went to med school, but she failed, so she wants to live vicariously through you, and so you need to go to med school, or you need to do this or that because that makes money, and so you can provide for your family. And so all these kids are pushing that direction, and so we never fulfill purpose of life. And that's why we have also, in my opinion, an amazing amount of people that are anxious and depressed because we're not fulfilling a purpose in our life. And so I really encourage people to sit down and ask themselves, what is it that I'm passionate about? What is the superpower that I wanted when I was a kid? What are the dreams about who I wanted to be? Because at that point, when we were a kid, we were convinced we could be that person, but then somebody told us it was impossible. And so most of us settled for ordinary, while some of us continue to chase those dreams. So I tell people we really need to figure out what our purpose in life is, then make a plan or a strategy and attack all the obstacles, and surround yourself with the team of experts that you need to make those dreams come true. And that's what a lot of my mentoring is about. Make them accountable and make those dreams come true, and set that plan and set that strategy.
Yeah, I'm happy you said that, because I mean, obviously you're talking about mentors, and I think you put a key word in there about family. And I think we haven't talked about this yet. It's like, obviously with your upbringing, right? You came from overseas at 8 years old, highly competitive. Are you coming from like descendants of a family that represents who you are right now? Were your parents highly motivated? Were they highly competitive? Were they entrepreneurs as well?
No, not at all. That's why I didn't really have a mentor or a guide. I'm plugging in my laptop before you lose me. Is the lighting still okay?
Yep.
All right. So I grew up in a single family home, me and my brother. And my mother worked very hard all day long to provide for us. And luckily, my grandparents lived within walking distance. So often we ended up having dinner there while my mom was still at work. So no, she just worked an 8-to-5 job. And so when I went to university, I did private swim lessons, and I was a DJ to try to make money to pay for my studies. Luckily, in Europe, it's much cheaper to go to university than over here. So after I graduated, at first I did physical education first years because I loved sports and it was fun. But what are you going to do with that, right? Besides becoming a PE teacher or a medical rep, which is certainly not what I want to do. I decided to do physical therapy after. And so the physical therapy basically allowed me to come to the United States because they were short of physical therapists, and that's why I saved $400, packed my backpack, and came over here. But yeah, it was a big struggle in the beginning. Credit score zero, $400, and no mentors. So I got knocked down many times. But again, I mean, that's one of my things. The glass is always half full, and I'm relentless. But I'm a stage in life where I feel, people don't have to go through that if they have a mentor. If somebody can show them the pitfalls and accelerate the process and show them how to do it, you're going to save yourself a decade if you have a good mentor, and you're going to, reach your highest potential if you surround yourself with the right people.
I love that. I love that. So I mean, based upon that, obviously, like you're a parent as well, and you have 2 daughters, and I think that they're probably, the information that I saw online, they're at least in college or past college, right?
Yes,
So I want
20
you to
and
kind of,
22.
oh yeah, so yeah, they're definitely up there, right? So I want you to kind of talk about that, like being that was your upbringing, you're a highly motivated individual. Like again, I would think by default you're instilling this into your kids. So how has your journey affected your kids? I mean, they've been with you for 20 something years, and like you said, you're 50. So roughly everything we've been talking about has been happening while they were around.
Yeah, sure. Well, they're a little bit like me. They challenge, they do critical thinking. They hear me talk all the time about health, right? When they're in the home, even if I'm on the call or helping a patient or doing something like this, they always have been listening in. And so, I'm proud of them, because in school, especially public school now, it's nothing but indoctrination, right? So, I remember a few instances where they said, okay, everybody writes a report on the benefits of GMO. So my daughter comes on and says, well, I thought there are no benefits. I said, no. I said, so write the dangers about GMO and make sure you put the references in so you don't get a bad grade, right? Because our teachers are, getting the agenda from the government, obviously. And so they are pushing certain agendas, in my opinion. And so, same with global warming. That was the other daughter. They had to talk about global warming and how it's going to affect the earth, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, I basically certainly taught them to do critical thinking, and also always look at, don't just accept things, whether it's from a teacher or a mentor or on the news or on the TV or reading in the book. Just because it's printed doesn't mean it's true. Same with research. I always tell people, you can find in research what you're looking for, and it's almost always true. So if you want to find that, product or nutrient ABC has effects, X, Y, Z, you probably can find it. But then I tell people, see if you Google in PubMed, Google the opposite and see what you find then, right? And so many times you find that too. You find 100 articles that show that cold laser works, and you find 100 that says it doesn't work. So now we're critical thinking, right? So now we got to go a little bit behind. Okay, who funded the research and who's involved and why did they do the research? So critical thinking, especially for our younger generation, is very important, I think. And I think, them listening even unconsciously or passively through the years, they're a little bit of a rebel like myself, and I like that, right? I like that. It's challenging what people say, or at least not in a bad way, but trying to learn and listening. Listening is important. That was one of my problems when I was younger, right? We're all opinionated when we're younger, but still one of my favorite books, Stephen R. Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Number 5, listen to understand, then be understood, right? Mm-hmm. So let people finish. Don't interrupt them, because they're looking at things from a different perspective. Try to understand why they're saying the things they're saying, and then you can come up with a good argument, or you can simply agree to disagree. But when you never try to listen and understand their perspective, you're never going to learn. If you only talk, you never learn. If I talk all day, I didn't learn all day, right? It's only when you listen you can learn. So it's those types of things that we really installed in them, because Stephen Covey also has one for teenagers that he put the same principle teenagers. So, those are the things that I would buy for a present for them, to educate them that way, and not just depend on the teachers in school.
I mean, I love that. I mean, that's a hell of a segue to like my next question. I mean, like that's a hell of a recommendation. And whoever has not read that book, I would say definitely get your hands on it.
Yeah.
So let's say in the past 30 years, is any other landmark book that you could think about that you would like to recommend to the listener to kind of help them to get to the level of success that you are?
Oh, there's so many books, right? I mean, it's all the motivational books, and they get you going for a little bit, and that's why you got to continue to do, self-development and reading and listening to podcasts. I guess a lot of people don't really read books anymore. We listen to guys like you and get a lot of information in a lot less time, right? You just put in your topic and you got the audio books when you drive,
Yep.
so you try to do those things, but no, from a health point of view, what really changed my life was a book of the early 1900s written in Old English
Mm.
called Human Life and Its Laws by Herbert L. Shelton. It's a big, huge book, but all the truths about health were known in the early 1900s, but those truths don't make any money, right? So what I did with that book, that motivated me to write my first book, because I took the principles in that book and I basically put them into our society and our culture right now versus the early 1900s. So that's a book that certainly changed my life. Yeah, Stephen Covey probably was my first one that really had me thinking about those types of things. But we can talk about, obviously, Think and Grow Rich, Poor Daddy,
Yeah.
all the classicals that everybody, especially our young people, should read.
Yep. So I mean, obviously, you're well read. You read multiple different books, but you've also published a pretty significant handful of books as well, too, right? I mean, your latest one was it EMR, which is electromagnetic radiation, right? Which is
Correct.
like a whole nother topic that we haven't even spoke about yet. So I want you to kind of talk about that book and what's the effect of someone reading that book. What should they get if they would have that book in their hands?
Yeah, I think what I'm writing now, I think is book number 8. So the EMR was published beginning of this year, actually was a bestseller on Amazon. Yeah, I knew it existed myself during COVID, and I said, well, I need to know more about it, because I didn't. And once I got started reading more about it, I got really alarmed, because it's a much bigger problem than we assume. And it's probably because that's why the subtitle is The Invisible Threat. We can't see it, we can hear it, we can smell it, we can't touch it. So most of us don't think it doesn't exist, right? But now there's plenty of research, over 30,000 peer-reviewed studies that show that the non-ionizing radiation, which we always assumed wasn't harmful, also indirectly causes free radical damage and DNA damage. And the non-ionizing radiation is what? It's our Wi-Fi, it's our cell phones, it's our smart appliances, our Bluetooth, all that kind of stuff. So yes, X-rays and gamma rays, we knew they cause damage, but we're not exposed to them often, maybe once a year for half a minute. But these non-ionizing radiation devices, 24/7, we've been bombarded with it. So I really got alarmed by doing my own research, and that's why I said, damn, I got to share this information. But all my books, the last chapter is always a to-do list, a check-off list. So my books are more like do-it-yourself type of books, where people can get all the tips and strategies to implement, and in this case, to mitigate or try to reduce the exposure to this radiation. What do you do with your cell phone? What do you do inside your house? How can you protect yourself? So that's what this is about. And so there's hundreds of things in that specific book that you can do at no cost inside the house, outside the house, to really reduce the radiation coming from those devices.
I think it's definitely interesting. I mean, like the dawn of the where technology is right now probably didn't really happen until like the last 10 to 15 years. So like the studies that you're talking about are like they're probably now starting to come to the 20-year mark to say that these are the causes and effects and the side effects of it.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you like a personal, okay, it's not going to be like a medical on the record question. Do you think that because of technology and its advancements in the last 20 years, do you think that the reverse is going to happen, as far as like if you go back to the 30s and 40s, people were dying a lot younger because they didn't really have the medication for it. And then as time progressed, people were living longer into the 80s and 90s. Do you think that this next generation may have a shorter lifespan because of the side effects of what we're now learning?
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just the technology, it's the accumulation of the food and the drinks. I mean, nothing's healthy anymore. So it's obviously the combination of all of those things. But people, it's very hard, because there's smart technology and computer assisted living, comes with all the conveniences. We certainly overlook the health ramifications of it. And when people say, oh, it's G4 and now it's going to be a 4G, now it's going to be 5G. It's not just the next step, or it's not just double. It's exponentially 1,000 times more. And the 4G is not going to go away. The 4G stays. The 5G is just on top of the 4G. And so it's not just 2 times more radiation or 4 times. No, it's like exponentially 1,000 times more radiation. And so our body is not designed for that. So even now, when those 5G towers are going up, we see already, and there's plenty of research, people can look it up, that the animals that are migratory birds and dolphins and whales and even elephants in Asia, they're migrating in the wrong direction, because the man-made frequencies are now interfering with the natural frequencies of the earth. And apparently, animals end up at G5 towers versus at where they were supposed to be going and migrating. So it's becoming really significant, and you can already observe it. But to answer your questions in broader terms, is I believe there's only one cause of all disease, and it's called toxemia. Toxemia literally means toxins in the blood, but what it really means is the following: as part of living, as part of our daily metabolism, we obviously produce toxins and waste products in our body. But in a healthy organism, those waste products are eliminated through the body, so no harm is done. All right. But today, I believe we're in a very peculiar situation in which we ingest and are exposed to far more toxins than the body possibly can eliminate. So now we have an accumulation of toxins in our blood and our body. And that's what's called toxemia. Now, toxemia does 2 things in our body. Number one, it causes free radical damage, because those toxins steal electrons from healthy atoms, which then become unstable, which are called free radicals, right? Which cause damage on a cellular level. And number 2, these toxins floating around in our body cause a constant state of emergency. And in conventional medicine, we call it systemic inflammation. And even conventional medicine now agrees that over 90%, it is 100, but over 90% of all disease is directly correlated to systemic inflammation. So toxemia is the cause of all disease. So there's only one solution. We need to keep toxemia in check. We need to control it. How do we do that? We need to minimize the ingestion and exposure to toxins, whether they come from man-made foods and drinks, pharmaceutical drugs, our environment, polluted air, polluted water, electromagnetic radiation, and the list goes on, and simultaneously increase the nutrients that effectively combat free radical damage, DNA damage, and systemic inflammation. And if we can keep that in check, we will be healthy. Even in a society where we bombarded or have an onslaught of these toxins, if we want to stay healthy, and if we want to still, biohack and have the 100 be the new 30, we certainly need to focus on mitigating these toxins and keeping toxemia in check. But if we don't do that, you're 100% correct. The CDC even probably 10 years ago already actually said once, and not that I go by what the CDC says, but they even said one time, this will be the first generation in which parents will outlive their children. And that's a scary thought, but we can control that, right? We're in control of our own habits, our own lifestyle, our own health, and even of our own genetics, because that's the area of epigenetics, right? Genetic predisposition always becomes an excuse of not doing something about your health issues, but we have now the science of epigenetics.
So I think this is a fascinating conversation, right? And so it kind of goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, right? And I was being a smart ass, and I was saying, okay, it's the limitless pill, and that was sci-fi. It wasn't in existence, but now the product that we're talking about today kind of brings that into a real world, and you're saying that that's healthy, right? So let's take what we're talking about now as far as like the genetics, right? And it being mutated, and the human body being very overly adapted over a period of time, right? Mm-hmm. Are we not in a stage that possibly we could have mutations versus deaths, into where people could kind of probably live longer or have other side effects based upon what's going on versus the negative? Like, I mean, again, it's going into sci-fi, but the reality is, much like we didn't have the limitless pill and now we kind of do, is that a possibility for us as humanity to then evolve?
Yeah, I think natural mutations would take much longer. It's not going to happen over a few centuries. That would take much longer, right? But our current technology and knowledge allows us to, again, to what I call biohacking, and that then allows us to modify our genes and our genetic expression. So in biohacking obviously, in my opinion, it's on the edge of health, but it's a very structured field, and there's many congresses and conventions, and I just talked at one in Miami. So when we talk about biohacking, there's different levels of biohacking. So there's 3 levels. Number 1, biomodulation. So those are things that give us a slight shift or modulate our bodily functions. For example, healthy food, high quality supplement, light, cold therapy, sauna. They just create an adaptive response that makes our body just a little bit stronger. So that's biomodulation. The next step is bioenhancement. So bioenhancement is more external substances that give a more dramatic effect. Examples are bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, BHRT, when our hormones drop as we age, or stem cell based therapies when the quantity and quality of our stem cells in our body drastically declines. Both of them, are controlled by our, genetics. But these therapies, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy and stem cell based therapies, they bring us beyond that genetic coding, and we go beyond that, right? So that's basically genetic, not bioenhancement. And then the third step is a little bit scarier, is biotransformation. And what that means is those are permanent changes. An easy example is a pacemaker, right? But also, for example, bionic limbs that now today operate with greater effectiveness and efficiency than any biological limb, right? Or merging our brain with computers, such as Neuralink, or cochlear implants for deafness, or computer chips in the brains of Parkinson's patients to help them with their debilitating effect. And then there's genetic modification, meaning replacing bad genes with good genes. And then there's genetic engineering, which is editing out all diseases. And so, but if becoming a modern day cyborg is not your cup of tea, you still can stick with biomodulation and bioenhancement. Because the last one, biotransformation, that's a little bit the transhumanism movement. And that's what I'm personally a little bit scared of. Because that's merging that's why we had to watch the movies The Terminator and those types of things, right? Is merging technology with the biology of our human body.
So, okay, so this next question is, okay, let's say 20 years from now, right? Obviously, you're in the space of biohacking, and then you're talking about technology, and technology essentially multiplies and triples in a short period of time. So over the next 20 years, right, where we were in 1998, 2000 until now, it's night and day difference with technology. So 20 years from now, where do you see what you're doing right now and the effect on the world around you?
Yeah. So, politically and everything that's going on there between the evil and the good on the world, I can't speak to how that's going to evolve. But pure from a scientific point of view, if everything keeps going, what's going, you can actually refer to I believe the February issue of Time Magazine 2011. It says singularity by 2030. So we're only 8 years away. What that means is that scientists predicted that by 2030, we will be able to live to 142 years old, but not being diseased, actually in good health. And that has to do with the fact that we can use stem cells and biohacking technologies to repair, regenerate, and renew and reverse that aging, right? So that was already said in 2011 on Time Magazine. 2030 is the year of singularity. Singularity means immortal, but with immortal, we mean 142 years old, right? What I believe is that, because you went a little bit further, 20 years from now, right? So in 2040, 45, I believe that 100 can be the new 30. So our chronological age can be 100, but we are doing things that a 30-year-old do now. So we can go skiing, we can go wakeboarding, we can go hiking, and we feel like a 30-year-old because our biology continues to renew and repair. And so there's going to be a huge discrepancy between our chronological age and our biological age.
I think it's a phenomenal statement of what you're talking about. And I think the thing that we didn't talk about as far as including this with technology would be like biotechnology, as far as like nanobots. like once you get to like the nanotechnology, and that's something that we're working on right now, and you're talking about repairing cells on a micro level, that can kind of compound itself a lot, like 10 times faster than 20, 30 years. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, and you know, you still got Tesla, and you still got the people that are waiting for the med bed, this miraculous bed that apparently exists and the aliens brought to Earth. But the med bed is something you lay in, and it just does all that, right? But the med bed is based on three principles that Tesla basically told us: it's energy, it's frequency, and it's vibration.
Mhm.
And so when we have those, we can continually repair, renew, and and promote longevity. And so people are waiting for that, but you don't have to wait, because we have those three components already available. We can change our energy, we can play with energy. There's many energy medicine devices out there, and not just devices. I mean, tips and techniques and exercises and things that we can do. We have frequency medicine out there. I mean, I even have hydrogen infused water that I add frequencies to. I have an anti-aging bed cover that I add frequencies to. And then vibration. We all know about the vibration platforms and the importance of, movement to get our lymphatic and cardiovascular system going. So those three principles that supposedly are the part of one med bed, we can practice. So there's no need to wait. These things are there. Let's use them to reverse our biological age.
So let's just say the listener, right? Let's say it's a 35-year-old listener listening to this right now, and obviously for the first time hearing this level of conversation, their mind is blown. It's kind of like they didn't even know these things exist, and they're listening to you. They're just like, holy shit, the world is not what I thought it was. What words of wisdom do you want to instill in them? Because again, we're talking to business people. So like essentially you're talking about living forever, living to 140. I want this person to imagine, what would it be like if Rockefeller lived to 140, right? What would it look like if all these historical people that have established the world that we live in right now had lived that long? I want you to deliver a value proposition to them to let them know what your thoughts are to move forward.
I just did one this morning. He's a very successful businessman that I met last year, and he lives on a multi-million-dollar mansion on the beach, and he also has very nice sports cars, but he's getting a day older. And when I met him, he was asking what I was doing to stay in shape, because he was in shape. He went to the gym, but he was very interested in what I had to say. So I actually texted him, not an hour before I got on the show here, and I said, look, you need to become my mentee, because I was going through my list, right? Because you're always upgrading your business because you want to be the best you can be. You're upgrading your house. You're upgrading your sports car every time that you're upgrading sport. What about upgrading yourself? Right? Because you're forgetting that, and you don't need to know how to do that, because I can show you how to upgrade yourself. And then we both remembered an incident that happens at one of the car shows that we were, and this is probably 2 years ago. But you have this very successful older, I just say 65-year-old man that's a little bit overweight, very successful, has his Ferrari, and he goes into the event and he tries to, because Lamborghini, it was a Lamborghini. It was a Lamborghini, and you could it was there at this place, you could go sit in it and kind of feel good. He went in it, he couldn't get out, because you know how low they are.
Yeah.
All right. So he had to crawl out on his knees. And I said, that's exactly the problem. He's successful in business. He's got the nicest car, but he's not taking care of himself. Right. So you're upgrading your business. You're upgrading your tools, your toys. You're upgrading your life when it comes to the morbid aspect. But what about you? Don't you want to be around longer? So you got to upgrade yourself. So business people out there, even young people, see, because you said 35, and when you're 35, you still may be feeling invincible, especially if you're in shape, right? But here's the thing, what people misunderstand. We always think that aging is linear, a year, a year, a year. That's a big mistake, because aging is exponential. Once you get 40, 50, and once one thing in your body starts giving out or not operating well, it's a cascade, and it's exponentially, right? So the last 10 years of your life go much faster downhill than between 30 and 40. Between 30 and 40, it's a slow aging process. 40, 50, it's a little bit faster. 50, 60, faster. So people need to realize aging is not linear, it's exponential. So to counteract aging, you can't do it linearly. You got to do exponentially. So the sooner you start, the further you're going to reach. If you want to reach that 142 and feel like a 40-year-old, then you better start, because you got to do it exponentially.
I think that's a great statement. So like what you said earlier, we're talking about by 2030, right? So essentially in the next 10 years. So you're talking about not the baby boomers, probably the X generation, Y generation, Z generation are all going to potentially have the capabilities to live to 140.
Yeah. And I believe we too. Because see, the thing is, people are listening. This is important to listen to, because we got our conventional medicine people listening. We got people that, that like science and like research listening too. So we can do this objectively. We didn't touch upon that there, right? Because there's many objective tests that we can do to set the baseline. Then we implement our strategies and our tools and our technologies and our compounds. And 6 months or a year later, we can measure again. So the top biohackers in this country, it's becoming a competition already. In other words, how many years did you shave off your biological life in 2021? And this is becoming a competition now, because we can objectively measure it. How can we measure it? Genetic testing, epigenetic testing. Most people probably heard about telomeres, so we can measure our telomere length. The telomeres are the end caps of our chromosomes that protect our DNA in each and every cell. And as we age, they shorten and shorten, because every time a cell divides, the telomere is not fully copied, so it loses some of its length. And so when all the length is lost, the cell cannot divide anymore, and it's considered a zombie cell. It's just a dead cell. It can't do anything anymore, right? So that's the aging process. So you can measure today with a simple DNA sample on what the length of your telomeres is, then incorporate, strategies, biohacking strategies, X, Y, Z, and measure it again. And if your telomere length is longer, you are reversing your biological age. And so we can, objectively measure that, which is pretty cool. Besides those types of testing, we can do biome gut testing. We can obviously do regular lab work. We can do all types of things, body composition analysis, to set a baseline and to see how we are progressing with the biohacking. So, we can objectively measure this.
So, I mean, I think you brought up telomeres, and you're talking about like once they get to a certain length, they become zombie state. So using the terminology of zombie, can you reanimate those cells, or is the technology being developed to reanimate them?
Well, yeah, we want to, and anything that's alive always strives for perfect health. Any cell in your body will, it's a law of human nature, the law of self-preservation. But in our in-health society, the body, in order for the body not to die, it's going to compensate, right? So when you drink a Diet Coke or a regular Coke, the acidity is so high, like between 3 and 5 pH, that your body immediately goes into a state of emergency, because it has to find alkalizing minerals to neutralize that, because the pH of our body, of our blood, is 7.35, 7.45. If it goes out of that range, we're in big trouble. So every time we do something silly, the body compensates for that. But what if you're not on a good diet and you don't have those minerals available to neutralize that acidity of your Coke? Well, then your body needs to borrow those minerals from your own body. So it's going to get magnesium from your muscles. Hence, you're always going to be tired and fatigued and have restless leg syndromes and all those types of things. And it's going to borrow calcium from your bones. Hence, osteopenia, osteoporosis, right? So that's just one example on how your body does whatever it takes to keep you alive. And we don't even realize that it's doing that, right? Because it takes time to realize, like, oh, my bones are brittle, because your body has been borrowing from it to keep you alive. When we are alive, our body, as you know, some cells replace themselves every day, and it takes about 3 months. So pure physically speaking, every X amount of months, we're a totally different person. So people say, how can we turn around, years of, degeneration and ill health? We can turn around pretty fast, because if we do the right things, we can start replacing those ill health cells with the right parts. right? I always give this, this is one of those aha moments for very many people. When I talk about health and give them a little different perspective, I like to tell them that, show them health on a cellular level. We have about 75 trillion cells in our body. We can't comprehend that number. It's more than the stars in the entire galaxy. And every single one of them performs a few million chemical reactions per second. So if you want to know how many chemical reactions there occur in our body at any given second, you simply have to multiply 75 trillion with a few million. So next time somebody asks you if you're busy, SA, you just say, yes, extremely, right? But each and every one of those cells has 100,000 receptors on its outer membrane. And the RNA or the messenger constantly tells those receptors, hey, I need vitamin C. Hey, I need omega-3. So those receptors now stick out their neck in the extracellular environment to find that vitamin C. But what if due to our SAD, standard American diet, that vitamin C is not available? Then our cells have to settle for less potent, incompatible nutrients. It's like we have an original piece of paper and we make a copy, and then we make a copy of that copy. And after a few times, we can't read it anymore. Same happens on a cellular level. We get incompatible nutrients. So the cell now is going to degenerate and mutate, which is disease and cancer. That's how simple it is. But it also teaches us one last thing. We don't have to be health freaks to be in optimal health, because people assume I am and I'm not. But with this little example on cellular health, it teaches us that we need to give our body all the essential nutrients it needs on a daily basis so it can repair, replace, replenish, and renew itself. And if we do that, it's okay to have the taco on Tuesday and the beer on Saturday. But the problem is that 99% of us only eat the bad stuff. And now the cells are forced to replace themselves with incompatible nutrients and cause degeneration and mutation, and that's disease, right? So as long as our cells are alive, we can take those bad incompatible parts back out and put the right ones back in, and the cell will become optimal, high quality again. But once it's dead, it's dead.
Damn. I mean, with that, I mean, obviously, like, I'm almost speechless, because I mean, the way I could visually see the representation of what you're defining, and it makes perfect logical sense. So let's say the listeners listening right now, and everyone is probably, their mouth is on the floor, and you have to roll up your tongue and close your mouth from drooling from all this data that you delivered. How does someone get in contact with you? Where would you like them to reach out to you? Is it on social media, your website, where?
Yeah, very easy. I'm not the biggest social media guy. I need some help there. But I got a website. It's called biohackingunlimited.com, or MVT. My name, Mike Van Thielen, but mvtonline.com. Same website. On the website, my books are there. My speaking experiences are there. But most importantly, right now, as long as I can, I have a 20-minute free Zoom call that you can schedule on the calendar right there on the page. And the purpose of that is, if you schedule a Zoom call with me, I'll see where you are in health, which stage you are, where you want to be, and how I can help you. We would initiate a plan and a strategy and put you in one of my mentorship programs. So you can check out my mentorship programs also. And so that's why I'm offering a 20-minute Zoom call. And I would say that 80% of my clients, SA, are for health reasons, because that's my background and credentials. But more and more people are now just wanting me to mentor them through business to be successful. I don't care what the business is, because it's about a plan and a strategy, and it's about finding the wrong people, and it's about being accountable, and it's about not taking on projects that don't help you further your goals, and say no to people and those types of things. And I make them accountable every week, and I'll stick with them and coach them until they reach their goals, whether that's business or personal life. So yeah, biohackingunlimited.com. And for that pill, try smartpill.com to get a free sample.
Wow. So going into like a couple bonus questions, and I'm dying to hear your answer for this. And I always say this is like my signature question, and I have no idea where you're going with this, right? If you could spend 24 hours with anyone, right? This person could be someone that's dead or someone that's alive. You have a 24-hour window, uninterrupted. Who would you want to spend those 24 hours with, and why?
Probably Gandhi.
Okay.
Just because it's one of my, I would say, if I have a weakness, I already have the knowledge, but I don't have the skill, and I have the willingness, because all my education in life too, it's based on the physical aspect of the body. And I have witnessed the power of the mind many times, right? And so, yes, it's about meditation and those types of things to get more neural connections, but also get in contact with this, everything that's out there, because that's where geniuses pull their information for. That's where inventions come from, and I believe that. And I've witnessed many crazy things. I witnessed a 70-year-old doing 19 one-arm push-ups, and he doesn't even look strong. And I just asked him, how do you do that? Because I only can do one. And he said, it's weightless to me. I can do 100 if you want to, because do it with the mind. Another example is there was this 60, 70-year-old overweight swimmer from the Czech Republic, but he wasn't really a swimmer. He was abused as a kid by his father, and when he jumped in a body of water, he felt safe because his father couldn't get to him. So he felt good in waters. If you look him up, he swam all the rivers in the world, the Amazon, the Ganges, which according to scientists and doctors is impossible, humanly impossible. And this is a guy that's not educated, so he's not verbally educated, so he doesn't know. So when they ask him questions, how do you do it? He basically says, well, in the beginning, I was just singing music or counting, and then after a while, I could go as far as I want because I felt like I wasn't in my body. I was watching myself swimming. He couldn't explain it, but he came to that state in mind. And just imagine that you have that power. So that's why, people like Gandhi or even Joe Dispenza, which is like, one of the authorities on rewiring the brain today. People like that I like to spend a day with, because that's where I need to upgrade myself. Gandhi was more particular not in upgrading the brain, but in really being like, you can take everything I have, but not me, or not my freedom or my dignity or my thinking, right? And so it's one thing to say that and one thing to really feel like that when they strip you of everything. That's a big difference right there. It's being in inner peace. Inner peace means you're in a state and in the present where nothing or nobody can disrupt your emotions, right? And so to me, that's the ultimate skill. And I got a little bit to go there. So I'd like to spend time with some people that mastered that already.
Well, I mean, I thought about mastering. I mean, obviously you mastered multiple different things in the lifespan that you've had so far. So like my next question is what is your most significant achievement to date?
Well, yeah, difficult, right? Achievement is, I think, having the knowledge and the drive to really help other people take control of their health. And that's kind of, I've always been spearheading the health freedom movement, which basically means is, the doctors are not helping you anymore. God bless them, but they don't know anything about health. And so I encourage people like, don't depend on others, just heal yourself. And so health freedom means it's like you have the choice, unlike animals who don't have the freedom to choose their response, we have the freedom to choose our response. So we can take control of our own health. And so if you don't know how to, there's functional medicine doctors, there's people like me, there's health coaches that can push you in the right directions. But don't blame the FDA, don't blame the big pharma, don't blame the CDC, the FDA, or your parents for your genetics. Stop blaming and take responsibility for your own health and decide whether you want to be sad and sorry or sick, sad and sick, or if you want to be healthy and happy. And so that's health freedom. So I feel very honored and very grateful to be in a position where I feel comfortable. I really can help lots of people, choose health freedom and take control of their own life.
Wow. So I think you brought up a solid keyword about, essentially just being happy. And I'm just kind of recapping in my memory when I was doing my due diligence before the show. In Instagram, there was a picture of both your daughters and you guys were in Brussels and you made a comment about waffles with Nutella. Like this is kind of off topic, kind of like, on the funny side, but I want to know, like, what is it with waffles and Nutella?
Yeah, what is it? Well, of course, Belgium's known for its chocolate. Nutella is not the best chocolate, obviously. You really have much better chocolate. And then Brussels or Belgium's known for waffles. Now, Belgians themselves not necessarily eat a lot of waffles. And there's two types of waffles, the Brussels waffles, which are the soft ones. And then you have the more dense sugary ones, which are the Liège waffles. they're obviously better because they're sugary, right? And then you put chocolate on there. So if you're a tourist and you go to Bruges or Antwerp or Brussels, you will find them everywhere, right? Because that's what they're selling. That's what Belgium's known for, the waffles and the chocolate, and of course the beer too. Belgium's known for its beers. So it's certainly a very yummy thing to eat over there.
So
Not healthy.
Yeah, it's very cool, very cool. So going into closing, I mean, obviously, I like the fact. I mean, I could tell that you're a foodie as well too. We could talk about food probably all day, just by the way you describe that. So going into closing, like in this podcast, I love to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of the show. So now the Boss Uncaged podcast is your show. I'm your guest. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me?
Oh man, you're different than most people. I like it. Well, what question I would ask you is, after you heard all this, what are you going to do about your health and about your biological age?
Well, for me, I mean, because I'm not a doctor by all means, but I definitely dibble in science. So I definitely understand like all the terminologies of what you're using and just the way you're defining things. It makes perfect sense. So by default, it kind of goes back into what do you eat kind of gives you what the results are going to be. So I'm gonna, look into what I'm eating a little bit differently. Like before I'd eat anything. You put a squirrel in front of me and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm a foodie. Just give it to me. But it makes perfect sense. It's like, it's not just a squirrel, it's what is that squirrel eating? And it's a cause and effect. And the way you describe the receptors on the cells, and they're trying to get vitamin C, but if they can't get vitamin C, they'll take a secondary supplement, but then eventually that cell will become mutated. It became transparent in that moment. So definitely kind of looking into what I'm eating a little bit more.
Yeah, just get all the nutrients your body needs, and then it's okay to eat bad stuff too, because your body won't use that, and that's something that you burn.
Yep. So with that, right? I mean, kind of flipping it back on you a little bit. Yeah. So I'm thinking that breakfast is probably a really important meal that most people skip.
Well, I'm going to correct you. I never eat breakfast because the least important meal that somebody can think of. The least important meal. Yeah.
So is it more so the nighttime, like before you go to the dinner time, or?
Well, we humans, we should only eat once a day, really, because I know, people in, you need 5 times a day metabolism. Yeah. These are all things to sell stuff, whether it's supplements or protein shakes or breakfast. Again, that's our government with the totally wrong food pyramid, putting in dairy. Dairy is poison. That's another topic. Meat, we're not meat either. So those are all topics we can get into and discuss. But breakfast is the least important meal. Animals in the wild only eat once a day. The Greeks, the Romans, even Moses, if you want to, they only eat once a day. Our digestive system, physiologically and biologically, is only designed to digest one meal a day because it takes 5-6 hours to digest a meal. It's not designed to do any more meals. And so why do I say breakfast is the least important? Because in this society, when I eat my meal, it's going to be in the early evening. Why? Because it takes several hours to digest. And when I go to sleep, I don't want to be digesting. I want to be repairing, recuperating, renewing, etc. Right? So that's when you eat your meal. Why not breakfast? The meal is digested. I'm sleeping and I'm recuperating. Right? So now I get up in the morning. So now all the nutrients that I needed and that I ate are available. Why would I have breakfast? I have all the energy in the world now. Why would I have breakfast and burden my digestive system? The best comparison most people that work 8 to 5 know is that when you go for a lunch over lunchtime and you go back to work, how do you feel? Sluggish SF, right? Yeah. Why? Why? Because your energy has to go to digestion. So now you do 2 bad jobs. Your digestion is bad and your performance in the afternoon is bad. Digestion takes up too much energy. So you don't want breakfast. Breakfast is a burden, and you have the healthy nutrients from the other day. So now, what you could do, which is what I do, mid-morning till lunch, I juice, right? I get my nutrients, all the nutrients that I need, I juice and I take supplements. And so then I have my meal at about 5 o'clock, 5:30, maybe even 6 o'clock. And that's the ideal way, because breakfast is the least important meal of the day.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool insight. So, I mean, again, going back into closing, do you have any additional questions that you'd like to ask me?
If you say Boss Uncaged, where does the Uncaged come from? I was wondering that before I get on.
So essentially,
freedom, right? Uncaged.
Correct. Essentially, a lot of people that are potentially listening to this podcast, they may be on two spectrums, right? One may be highly successful or already an entrepreneur and successful, or the other one is working for someone and they're looking for the opportunity to learn to how to then become an entrepreneur. So essentially, they're in the cage and they want to break out the cage. They want to
I
become the
gotcha.
boss, become the boss in cage.
Yeah. Would that apply to you're in the bubble and you're comfortable where you are, but in order to make change, you got to step out of the bubble or out of the cage?
I mean, literally, and that's
Same
why
thing.
like I'm a brand guy, right? So again, all the things that you're defining all go into this one element of these two words. You can
Yes.
self-define it in any way, whatever works for you, but the goal
Yeah,
is
uncaged.
you have to get uncaged.
Yeah. You got to get into that unknown if you want to develop and if you want to get to a higher potential.
Exactly. Dead on, man. But
Awesome.
I think that this episode was definitely a episode for the textbooks for sure. I mean, there's just so much energy and so much information, and the way you define and clarify things. I think that not only are you well spoken, but it makes you think. So I definitely appreciate that.
Yep. It's all about critical thinking.
Yep.
Thanks for having me, and have me on anytime you want.
The pleasure was mine.
All right.
Again, have a good one.
You
S.A.
too.
Grant
Take
over
care.
and out.